New developments in the international tug-of-war involving the Maryland businessman imprisoned in Cuba on spying allegations. Mary joins us now with the latest.
Alan Gross continues to fight for his freedom. This time, he has written a letter to President Obama, and that letter was delivered to the White House today. 64-year-old Alan Gross, a subcontractor with the U.S. Agency for International Development, was arrested in Cuba on December 3, 2009. He was setting up an internet network for the country's Jewish community. Gross was convicted in 2011 of crimes against the Cuban nation and sentenced to 15 years. He now fears the U.S. government has forgotten him. Gross writes to President Obama, "With the utmost respect, Mr. President, I fear that my government, the very government I was serving when I began this nightmare, has abandoned me. Officials in your administration have expressed sympathy and called for my unconditional release, and I very much appreciate that, but it has not brought me home." Today, the White House responded to that letter.
We reiterate today our call for the Cuban government to release Alan Gross. Mr. Gross's detention remains an impediment to more constructive relations between the United States and Cuba.
Just hours before that news conference, Alan Gross's wife, Judy, rallied outside the White House with other supporters, hoping to keep the pressure on President Obama.
I am requesting that the President, the leader of this great nation, get personally involved and to do whatever it takes to bring Alan home.
In his letter to President Obama, Alan Gross also describes his heartache of not being with his ailing daughter and mother and having to sell their home in Maryland. Gross writes, "I ask that you take action to secure my release for my sake and the sake of my family." Alan Gross's mother and daughter have battled cancer. Mary Bubala, WJZ Eyewitness News.
Now, earlier this year, a federal court dismissed a lawsuit the Gross family had filed against his employer, claiming he was not informed of the possible danger of the mission in Cuba.